All right, I won't hold up too much longer because we'll just do some quick introductions and just an introduction to the topic today, and then we'll jump into the meat of it. So um, I have the chat up as well. So if anyone has any questions, you can put it in the chat. Feel free to unmute and just ask the question. This is really just meant to be um, a I labeled it as a coffee chat. It really is just meant to be a conversation Beth and I will be having as two friends beyond colleagues. And yeah, if someone wants to jump in or has a question, please feel free. This should just feel just as a learning opportunity for all of us, including Beth and I. So please, like I said, feel free to jump in at any time. The topic for today is transformative writing instruction, insights and innovations from the classroom. I specifically left out AI in the title. I did end up sneaking it into the description, but it is a topic. That is a big portion of this is using AI within writing instruction. And I'm very excited to share what we've done over the past 2 years. Beth and I'm just kind of been her sidekick. She's been the one who has really spearheaded all of this and is pretty amazing. So uh, I will start by just showing you the presentation roadmap. This is going to be the bulk of when I talk, and then I just want Beth to be the star here, and I'll just kind of be the person asking questions and chiming in every now and then. Um, but the main topics for today are going to be the origins, so the when, how, why, reservations, things like that. We then had our early phase adoptions, or sorry, not adoptions, adaptations. So things like the topics I want to cover are things like better but not perfect, some early successes, some early stumbling blocks, how we address quality assurance, how we were being proactive. Then we'll talk about our year one wrap up, how we started year two, our major evolution, so the big evolution of what we have done, that kind of led to, I would say, wanting to present this information here, and then year two wrap up, and then we'll do some Q&A. But like I said, if you have a question, put it in the chat or on mic. We're happy to receive those questions as we go too. So just quick introductions. I'm Jared Minderman. I started as a school psychologist. I have been an MTSS specialist for the past 3 years. I'm currently shifting between two jobs. And then Beth, do you want to introduce yourself? I've been talking way too long.
Sure. Good morning. My name's Beth Wanamaker. I'm heading into my 20th year of teaching. Been teaching fourth and fifth grade ELA for all of those years. And I live locally here in Milford. I have three kids who are pretty much grown. And Jared and I have jumped on this bandwagon together, and it's been a really amazing journey for us. So we're excited to share that with you.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So like I said, I'm just going to be the facilitator of Beth's wisdom and her experiences, and like I said, I'll chime in. But a lot of these prompts are just kind of to get the conversation going and kind of show everyone our experience over the past 2 years. So Beth, if you just want to kind of start with your side of the when. So I marked it that we started about in January of 2023, uh, which it feels like much longer than that. But yeah, so do you want to kind of start with
Sure.
what you remember as the beginnings of this?
So, I mean, as an ELA teacher, writing is a huge part of that, and I'm very passionate about the writing. But the one downfall of writing is the grading.
So Beth is apparently having a little bit of network connection issues. So I'm going to jump in for her in moments like this. Um, so yeah, so one of the things that Beth and I talked about was the grading can be very difficult, right? Like Beth always has emphasized. Oh, you back? Shoot.
Wi-Fi here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. So anyway, we were, the grading was kind of the driving force, and Jared and I were talking, and just when AI started to get going and things, and we just kind of snowballed into this project, and I was just ready to jump on board to see if I could enhance my kids' writing, get them positive feedback and grow them as writers. That's really where it all started, the when and the why back in, the winter of 2023.
And the how. This is just me heaping on praise to Beth here, but so I was an MTSS specialist. Part of my job was facilitating TBTs. I wouldn't say running them. I was just kind of a facilitator, and I proposed this work to 28 teachers across 6 different buildings, and Beth was at the time the only one who volunteered to explore AI and its potential with me. So this was back, like I said, in January 2023, very early in the generative AI space. Lots of people not knowing what they were doing. Uh, Beth and I's approach very quickly became, I've said that a lot of people in the education space with AI, they like to go uh, a mile wide and an inch deep. So it's like, and I was kind of at times victim, like I fell prey to this mindset as well, which is how many different things can teachers do with AI, right? What are I think we all remember the Instagram posts that are the 50 ways that AI will change your teaching. And my experience has been that nobody is changing 50 things about their teaching, in a year, even in, 2 or 3 years. So that didn't feel like the right approach for me. For us, it was let's go an inch wide and then just go a mile deep on it. Like let's see like really how far we can stretch the potential. So um, there were certain reservations. I felt like that lots of people uh, they felt like that they were just uncomfortable with AI, right? So it's not they didn't really understand it. I think it's come a little bit, uh, but it's definitely still people have their reservations at first, and they don't want to take the human element out of grading. We very much felt the same way. And it's not so much the grading, it's the instruction that we don't want to take the human element out of, right? I don't think the grading is overly important as far as the human element. If we can get it to be objective and consistent and standard, and we feel good about it, then I'm comfortable with that, right? And one of the things that I've always said is we never, it's a little different, but math is all like computer graded, right? Like whenever you turn in a math assignment online, it's gonna be it's graded almost instantaneously, and we never question it, right? Now it's yes, there's a formula, but we're not the ones grading it. If we can get a very consistent, objective system of providing scores for students within their writing, uh, I think then we should be able to embrace it, right? And how can we leverage the time that it's giving back to us, right? Um, and then, so we're going to go on to early adaptations. So these are just some of the areas that I kind of picked as some of the, talking points that we talk about in our early phases. Beth, if you want to just jump in and kind of go through some of these, and then I'll jump in on whatever you don't want to cover. So,
Sure. Um, I got to think back to that. It took us some time to get to where we are now. And in the early phases, we were just kind of, diving in, not knowing really where we were going, honestly. We were, Jarrett was working on the rubrics, and I was working on the prompts and the writing portion with my kids, and together we just kind of dove in and just started playing around with how can we expedite grading in a manner that goes with my philosophy of teaching as well. And so the first few times we just kind of started seeing what we can do and had to tweak along the way. But it was really great. We learned a lot as well. But let me preface this by saying that I knew my kids as a writer, each one
mm,
of them, and I read every single essay. It wasn't just me saying I don't want to look at these. It has to go hand in hand. So we just started kind of muddling through and tweaking it as we were going on and seeing how we can make it better each time. And let me tell you though, the kids loved the feedback. And the more I did it, the more they craved it and the more they wanted to write and they got excited about their writing.
Yeah, I think that was a really important part too, was we didn't just blindly we didn't just blindly trust the generative AI from the start. Sorry, my foster is getting very excited. Um, Go ahead. We did not we did not blindly trust it from the start. It certainly was a I remember there was times where it was, okay, we're gonna grade five, and then it's gonna grade five, and we're gonna compare, and we're gonna see. So we kind of calibrated with it. And I think it was very helpful for us to use the state rubric and use a consistent rubric. So in Ohio, we have a informational rubric, and then we have an opinion rubric that spans grade 3 to 5. So I think that was really important for us, was developing understanding with that consistent rubric, using the same rubric over and over again rather than um, jumping around changing the rubric. That part was fine tuning. That was really important for us because it then led to us having an understanding of, okay, this is what consistently the writing output will look like. How will it score it? How will it give feedback? Um, and then as far as some of the stumbling blocks, this was something that I found so interesting, right? So at first, this was not an automated process. Like we were going onto chatgpt.com, right? And we were entering the prompt back and forth. Like we had a set writing prompt, uh, several pages long. You would enter the information with the essay, and then you would just plug in each additional essay every time, right? So it took the grading process of 75 students, it condensed it from a couple of, like, maybe a couple of days to a week down to like a 2 hour window. And so that was good. It was a good start, but then there was still a lot of work that had to be done, copy
Mhm.
pasting back and forth. And this is coming from two people who, like, I didn't know anything about, software development or automation, things like that. I was very much I was pretty new to. I mean, I jumped into AI like as it was getting rolling in November, January. But I didn't have any previous experience. Like, I was a school psychologist. I was in education. And so we were walking through it together at the time. The formula for success for us that we found, I think that this was really important, was the objective feedback, the quantity, right? So the amount of essays that could be done, and then the fact that they were just getting that instant feedback, and it was closing that loop, and the kids felt more engaged, right? So if you're writing an essay and then you're getting feedback the next day, I just think that there's a little bit more excitement that goes along with it. So uh, I think those were some of the big things. Those early on, those were some of the big things for us. That was what those were the things that we focused on in those early phases. So then to go on, I just want to talk about the end of year one, right? So what did leading up to the OST? So in Ohio, in about, what is it, April, we take the OST, so our state test. So you just want to talk us through, like, what a typical year of prep looked like for you, how many essays are you doing versus how this first year looked for you, how many essays you did. And then we'll go into some of the results, like just an overview of the results. I'm not going to get bogged down here with any details or, like, statistical analysis or anything, but just overall results.
Sure. I mean, typically OST prep starts right around like March. And, we're doing your typical things with the reading portion and the writing portion, and you're trying to knock out, a couple informative essays, a couple opinion essays before you take that test in May. And, previous years, it might have been honestly one of each, right? Because you have to focus on both. But the more I got into my teaching career and the more
So I'll jump in for her. One of the,
and
you
I'm,
know,
I'm focusing in on this writing. Oh, okay. Sorry. I
no,
don't know
you're
what's
fine.
going on with this. I
It's
feel
okay.
terrible.
It's okay.
Okay. Anyway, you figure out that the writing has a lot of weight. It carries a lot of weight. So at the end of the first year with the automated grading, I'm able to do twice as many essays in this amount of time because the grading, let's be honest, it takes a couple weeks. If you're going to be giving honest, corrective feedback to 80 kids, it takes a while. So if you're getting this honest, corrective feedback in a day versus 2 weeks, it allows you to do more essays and to help these kids to grow as writers a lot quicker. So that was the biggest takeaway from year one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the exciting thing was we saw pretty immediate results. Like there was more students that were scoring above average. There was on the writing section. And why that excited us is because we see over many multiple years of data that at least in Ohio, I think it might vary in different states, but in Ohio, just the way that the point spread works on the OST is it's writing is so, like you were saying, it's so heavily weighted. It's very like predictive of if you're going to pass the whole OST overall. And I want to take a second to be clear here. It's not just about OST results. It's not just about we do a big focus was just creating better writers. Like absolutely, that was a big focus. I've always been of the mindset that uh, test scores do matter. And I say that because, I watch really great teachers get really upset when they have bad test scores, right? When a year doesn't go as you planned, I watch teachers get emotional, right? Like you see teachers, it's a very personal thing, your test scores, because teachers feel like it's a reflection of them as a teacher. And I'm going to argue that it's not always the case. There are so many outside factors, there's so many confounding variables in all of those things. But if we get that upset when things don't go well, I also want to celebrate when they do go well. Like I want us to embrace it and not just dismiss it as test scores aren't important, right? They're not the end all be all. Growth is really important. Students' joy of learning is really important. But it can be one of the metrics that we use, right? Certainly can be one of the metrics that we use. So um going on starting year two, this is really interesting actually, right? Because you would think like, oh, after year one, we just kept the ball rolling and we kept improving and we kept iterating and learning and Beth certainly did. I My role kind of switched a little bit and I was no longer at all six buildings, so I was not seeing Beth frequently. Like I don't think we saw each other more than twice in the first semester. So Beth really just on her own kept the ball rolling. I think I touched base with you, but I would say August through almost January, we didn't really have much conversation about the AI piece. Like we got it where we wanted, and then so if you just want to talk about the difference of what it was like starting in the beginning of the year, like how did you introduce this? Like how did you maintain uh the Beth part of the instruction, right? Because it certainly isn't just the AI. The AI is more the tool. It's a way to give you some time back, but it's not the instructor. Like you're still the instructor. How did you keep the Beth of it all? Oh no. Okay. Um, so I know the answer to this because Beth and I are close, so I'm gonna go ahead and start for her. Uh, for her, it was, it wasn't one essay a week at the beginning of the year, right? She still is teaching her students the principles of what she's looking for in a writer, right? Like what are the structures she's looking for? And the easiest way is this is what a introductory paragraph looks like things we all know, right? This is what a conclusion paragraph looks like. This is how you're providing evidence. Um, and how do you connect those? Beth, you back?
Yeah, I am.
No worries, you're completely fine. Um the how do you connect all of those things, right? And none of that is being taught by the AI.
Wi-Fi system. Okay.
All good?
Say that question again.
Oh, I was just weaving
Yeah, just say
together.
that again so I can.
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
weaving together how you started the year. You were teaching your students your structure that you teach them, and then
Sure.
how were you introducing AI to the concept? Were students
Okay.
excited to see the AI, things like that?
So I started right away.
Okay.
The very first essay
Hmm.
was just totally guided by me,
Hmm.
but graded with AI, and the kids got to see it right away.
Okay.
And so that sparked their interest right away, which was great. And So from August to December, it's a lot of me, a lot of guiding, a lot of helping them with their writing, helping to structure their paragraphs, all of that. But they're seeing that feedback every single time we do an essay, which is about once every other week. We're doing a full essay. Come January, it's a lot less of me. More of them. They know the structure, they know how to do it. And that's when I introduce the time factor. Um, and just they knew the rubric, they knew what they needed to get, they knew what they got last time, they looked at their feedback, and the second they turned it in, they wanted their grade, which was funny. I was like, you got to give me a day at least. And they checked them even before they get a
Mhm.
chance to come back to me. So it was really exciting, and their writing improved even more in year two. It was great.
And then this was something that I found, like this was just one of those moments that this was a conversation we had later, but it was one of those moments that kind of gave me goosebumps when we were talking about it. And you talking about seeing a shift in when you when you weren't the one being the bad guy giving the grade, right? But it was the student was receiving the grade from the system, the AI, and then you almost became their partner, right? Can you talk through
Mhm.
that a little bit? Yeah, so lots of my students just want to turn it in and be done. So Amy asked a really great question. So Amy asked, how do you teach students to care about the feedback? Lots of my students just want to turn it in and be done. So one of the things that this was kind of exactly what we were just going to go over. As soon as we were embracing, the big thing for us was as we didn't shy away from the fact that it was AI, right? It was kind of embracing it. So in Ohio specifically, they are using AI to grade the state tests as well, right? And so we kind of embraced it. Like we didn't dive too deep into, you know, like it's not like overemphasizing the AI, but we didn't shy away from the fact that it was AI. Um, and so Beth, you're back. You're good.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so will you kind of go into will you answer that question? Oh, perfect.
Sure.
Also in Ohio, Amy. Will you kind of go into that? How did the students seem to start caring about the feedback?
Sure. It was kind of great actually. Um, the very first few times that we did the feedback, we went over it together. Like everybody look at it. I pulled them back in small groups. We looked carefully at it. We looked to see what we needed to add. But as we continued to do that, and the kids started buying in, I had several kids that would come to me afterwards and say, "Can we do a conference? I want to know what I can do better next time. How can I use this feedback to get a better score next time?" And that was really enlightening and exciting because they were buying in and they wanted to improve their writing. I'm not saying every kid did that, but I did have several that wanted to do that. It was great. I mean, I
And I
think
will
it's just fostering, but
and I will say like just also to be clear, because I think sometimes this can kind of help guide our thoughts on this. Uh, the school that Beth is at is not like is definitely not the highest performing school in the district. It's one of the lower SES schools of the higher need schools. Typically have the lower test scores among elementary schools in our district. Um, it is this is not like a super high performing building typically. It so there are hugely varying levels of academic interest amongst our students, right? So it's not like everyone is coming in and ready to go, right? It was definitely, we watched the evolution of kids start to feel like it was a teaming up with the teacher. And it was like almost, it kind of was like almost a student teacher against the computer type of thing, right? Like almost gamifying it, it kind of felt like. Because of that, I think it was just leaning into quite a few different principles, like closing a feedback loop. It was gamifying it. It was we also were having the students start to self-score, right? So when they turned the essay in, they would fill out a rubric for themselves um, prior to getting the score back, and then kind of conferencing with the teacher. And so um, those were some of the things that we started in year two, right? So the major evolution and results. So faster didn't mean instant. This was something that we saw it was still taking back time. Like the students really wanted the feedback as soon as possible. Like they pressed the submit button and they wanted the results. But unfortunately, like at the time, that wasn't really how it was set up. So, it was still taking a couple of hours that, the next day, we couldn't get it back to them like the next day. It was still like, because at that time we were still copy pasting back and forth into to ChatGPT, and there were different issues we found with that, right? Like we do know that the model, like the base models on ChatGPT.com, they fatigue is how we call it, but that's just essentially they have a limited memory capacity, so you have to like reintroduce the prompts. There's issues that come along with that, right? So we started to that was kind of when I came back into the picture. I got kind of just a conversation that I had with Beth kind of re-sparked my interest in it, and I had a little bit of a pocket of time, and I started to get into the what automation looked like, right? And we ended up coming up with a system that did automate the whole process. There was no longer any clicking back and forth. It was just students pressed submit. They then the essay, was graded, and there was feedback provided, and I we wanted to be sure also, this is an important time. When I say automated, we are not creating a way for students to interface with AI, right? So like ChatGPT has specific policies on who can use AI, like ages, things like that. We were careful within our own schools rules and boundaries. So it was still controlled through a teacher, right? So then Beth and I would go in, we would make sure that the feedback was valid, like we still were validating, making sure that things were correct. Um, and and then we would run a report, and it would come up with a report that had, the student's essay, the three scores that they got, and then the feedback. And so what was really important about this is we started to notice, we did feel like that the feedback was accurate. There was only so much feedback that it will give, right? And our justification to that is there's only so many ways that you can go from a 2 to a 3. There's only so many ways that you can go from a 3 to a 4 on the rubric, right? Like there's only so many boxes that you can check. So the feedback is not going to look, ultra customized. That's not what it's meant to be doing, right? It's meant to say like, did you check these boxes on the rubric? Uh, what boxes are you missing? And then that kind of leads to the conversation of the teacher. The teacher can go in and then start to point to individual parts within the essay and work with the students in more of that team up type of way. So um, the other thing that was really exciting about this is this was when we started to really validate the consistency, right? So it went from, we just had this prompt that we kind of felt good about. Like sometimes it used to be like, an essay might actually be an 8, but it would score anywhere from a 7 to a 9. Like it wasn't overly consistent. Like it was pretty predictable, but it wasn't like laser focused in on how consistent it was compared to what the state might grade. And that was just our lack of experience with AI at the time. But so in Ohio, there's the readiness assessment where we can actually see how students would score given an essay. We get their essay back and the rubric scores back. So we were actually able to train our own model, with thousands of samples of student data and how it was scored against the state's AI, like their model. And we actually were able to reduce it to within 0.25 points of the state. So it became very consistent and very predictive of how the students would score in the state. So, or based on the state's, criteria. And so it did become very predictive of where the students were at. And we started to see some really interesting things. We started to see, and I think, sorry, this is a caveat here, a little asterisk. When we say some of these things, it's not saying that we're teaching to the AI, right? It's just interesting, right? So an example of this is the AI doesn't really care about paragraphs, right? Like you can get it all done in one long wall paragraph. Are we suggesting that? No, probably not, because you are going to be writing to human readers in paragraphs and sentence structure, all of it. I mean, those things matter, right? They do, and the flow of an essay matters. But what we also saw is you can get us like a pretty good score, an above average score with a paragraph, where it's just like the way that you structure it, because it's looking for specific things in the rubric. Um, and so, the combination of understanding what it's looking for and then being able to, prepare students for what are the boxes that we need to check, really, truly, like what are the boxes we need to check. And then what we started to realize, this was like the big, aha for me, was you think of, I wish I would have made this graphic, but you think of it like, the distance from a 0 to a 1 is the same as 1 to a 2, 2 to a 3, 3 to 4, right? But it's really not. Like the distance from a 0 to a 1, I mean, a 1 to a 2 is like this big, and then a 2 to a 3 is this big. And then there's this huge range of what a 3 looks like, right? And 2, 3, like, and I say 3, like that would be what is considered adequate based on the rubric. And it's this huge range. Like it can be like the bottom end of what like a 3 is nowhere close to what the bottom end or the top end of a 3 for like organization looks like. It can look completely different. And so that kind of like clued us into the fact that if you just check the right boxes, like you can get uh, a pretty good score just by knowing, the structure. And then what we started to see towards the end, because we were able to do more and more essays, was we started to see a lot of perfect scores like on these essays, that which just was very rare to, it's very difficult to get, not impossible, but it's very difficult to get, perfect scores. And we started to see lots and lots of like perfect score. Students were really starting to understand, how to write these really good essays. And part of that comes down to they were, once they understood the structure and once they understood the expectations, got all those repetitions, then they started to get creative because they were trying to beat, they were trying to beat the 8, beat the 9, and get to that, those perfect scores. So um that is the bulk our actual um of our actual presentation, right? That's the bulk of our presentation. Um Beth, is there anything that you would want to chime into here? Sorry, I kind of took over a little bit while your
Yeah.
network was.
Fan.
Is there any other things that you want to talk about, like that, just like your key
Sure.
takeaways, that your experience with all of this, and then if you want to also mention, this is like one of my favorite things, the survey that you give at the end of the year. So if you want to,
Sure.
those are, whatever, do with what you will. I'll shut up.
For the one thing I want to touch on is the differentiation piece. I
Yes,
mean, we
please.
all have this kids in our class who are non-readers, and if you're a non-reader, it's a struggle to write, or low readers. But seeing and really diving into this with the rubrics and what you can do, we were able to move those zeros, those kids who were barely writing anything, to a 1, to a 2, to a 3, to a 4, and show growth. And they were getting excited because they were seeing success. So that was a huge takeaway there. Um, the survey that I give at the end of
Oh no. While we wait for Beth, because I'm
one of
not
the
going to
things I
take.
ask is, what is one thing that you're proud of? And okay, here,
Sorry.
I can
Okay,
chat.
you're back. You're back.
Okay, as I say, I can put it in the chat.
Oh no, no, you're
Um,
good.
they all said that one thing they were super proud of was their writing. And I'm talking all 75 of our fifth graders mentioned that in that survey. It was super exciting because let me tell you, they didn't like the process and they would complain and moan and groan and all the way through. But in the end, they were super proud of themselves.
Yeah, I thought that was so awesome. Just that all of your students, so you over the course of a year, I mean, you guys did so many essays, right? I mean,
We
so like
did.
probably over 20 essays, I would say, over the course of the year.
Yes,
And to see your students go from like that moaning and groaning about it to every single one of them being proud of themselves as writers, I just think that's kind of amazing. So,
it was.
um, all right, so questions and the Q&A time, right? So I have a question in the chat, and it was interested about how we also automated the process. So yeah, so this is something that, I burned a lot of time on. Like this was something that did not come easy. Um, there is everything is still run through ChatGPT. Most businesses with that are AI focused, if you're thinking about things like Magic School AI. That's a pretty common example in the education AI space. But most of the AI products are just ChatGPT with a wrapper. So what I mean by that is you're just sending the information, you're collecting information, you're sending it to ChatGPT, and it's sending it back. So you just have use that. There's documentation on their website of how you establish that link, and then it's just a lot of this is very technical stuff that I had to stumble through myself. Like I am no expert. I'm sure that someone that was proficient in coding that wouldn't have stumbled through as much. But it was just, watching lots of YouTube videos, watching, learning how to establish the link between, a software that I developed and OpenAI, and then learning how to streamline that process. And you start to get into things like tokens, which are just like how long is the prompt that you're actually submitting, because then you start to get into things like when you automate, there's a cost associated with it, and no longer is free because you're not the one interfacing back and forth with ChatGPT, right? Like, so we got to the point where, you know, we would have 80 students submit an essay at the end of a bell, and it's, all 80 are done, but that 80 could have been, 1,000 or whatever. And that was actually how we also calibrated our model against the base model is once you have the data structured in a specific way, you can run your prompt with 1,000 essays, right? And that's like prompt engineering. And like I stay away from these terms because I don't really think that there's many AI experts out there. Like I think it's so early and it evolves so much. And like you just have to be careful. Anytime someone's calling themselves like an expert or a prompt engineer, it's such a new field and um really it's just a lot of people exploring. There might be people a little bit more ahead than others, but it's just about like you taking the time to learn some of the back end side of things and starting to leverage it. So I hope that answers your question. I wish I had a better answer, but I am just not a very technical person. It took a lot of time and patience on my part. And yeah, so we like it through our district, we were actually just running it through the Google Suite, right? So we were using AppScript, and we were running it through like we had a very like simplified workflow of it would go from a Google form to a Google Sheet, and then uh, it would spit out using Autocrat. That was how we ran our reports, right? So it was just connecting. I think a lot of us, like a lot of people, have different levels of experience with different things, but one of those being uh, like Autocrat was really helpful in automating the generating the reports and then sending them to students' emails and things like that. So um, I would say that you don't have to like you certainly do not have to ever rely on all of this stuff is out there. It's open source. Like there's fees, but like as far as like the transactions between OpenAI, because that's their business model largely. Um, but like those are they're not large fees. Like they're very small, like in the grand scheme of things. Um and like I was like for what Beth and I were doing, and then what ended up a lot of other teachers in our district started doing, I was willing to like, kind of front some of that. But it was just learning all of those things um and then developing the workflow with the tools that you understood. So the beautiful thing is, and I'll say this too, and you have to know how to ask the right questions, right? But ChatGPT can actually, teach you how to use a lot of these things, right? Like if you ask the right questions and you're consistent and persistent and you work to debug and I'm like saying all of these things, I'm trying to keep it as untechnical as possible because even if I sound technical, I'm not. Like I'm just not a very like nothing about the nothing about the technical side of it is just things that I would you know claim claim is that's something I'm an expert in. Um, so I would be happy, like I am happy to connect with you. So there's another question. Would I be willing to share the app script? So I would be happy to connect you with the source document. So I'm working with some districts right now that is using the app script. So I can't share the direct app script, but I'm more than happy, Amy, to connect with you. My email will be at the end on this slide right here. And yeah, I'm happy to connect, and we can kind of talk about um, just kind of how I got there, the source document, things like that. Um, and then I had another question from Amelia. Was Autocrat reliable for you? I used it years ago, but then moved to Document Studio for reliability. So Autocrat is I find Autocrat to be great. I ended up actually moving away from Autocrat and just I coded my own Autocrat in AppScript. Right? You can actually add quite a bit of customization to your autocrats if you just code it in AppScript. Again, I am not a coding expert. Most of the lines of code that I write can't really tell you what they do. I just use ChatGPT. Like I'm not kidding when I say that like it is a great assistant for me, and it's actually probably I say it's probably smart. It's way smarter than me, right? But yeah, right. Autocrat was getting on. Yeah, Jessica, I am totally in agreement with that. I think that apps like if I could shout something from the mountaintops, it would be that learn app script. And like I don't know, you don't even have to become an expert in app script, but just learn how to like interface with the AI and automate some of the things that you do, right? Like you can add a ton of customization um to a lot of your processes and improve your workflows um and so autocrat is can get on your nerves. It can certainly be frustrating. But if if you learn how to do that in AppScript, and then you throw your script through ChatGPT again and say, optimize this for me, make this faster, it'll start to do things like it'll start to batch things for you, and it'll make things faster and more consistent. And so Um, are there so I'll go ahead and throw this up. Um, this is Beth in my email. And then if there's any questions, if anyone has any other questions, I will stay on. We're here for another 10-15 minutes, but I just encourage people to explore. I think the big takeaway was neither Beth nor myself were experts in this. I'm still not confident about this. If you counted the number of ums I said in this presentation alone, you would certainly be able to tell that I'm still learning all the time. And yeah, could we see a graded essay? Yeah, so let me I can absolutely pull one up. So um, I'm going to uh, I'm going to pull one up real quick and I'll throw it up on the screen. Um, but yeah, absolutely. What would be writing? It would be no. Yeah, I'm pulling this up now. Okay, so this was am I sharing this? I'm sharing this window, so you guys could see this now? Can I get a thumbs
Yes.
up? Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So this was just a sample one done that was from a student's essay. This has been de-identified, things like that. But this was we actually used for this one. It was one of the state released ones. So we use a combination. So any of the ones the state use, we use those because those are ones that have been used. Like we know that those are exactly what they use, but we also will use other ones, right? So one of the things that's really cool is you can take all the state released ones. You can start to learn what are the lexile ranges of the ones that the state use, the passages that the state use, and then you can start to learn the word count. And then the formula for their actual prompt, it only changes by like one sentence. So you can have infinite number, right? And you can even use ChatGPT or any other AI um, to build, lots and lots of essays for you. So, but this would have been one. So this was a student's essay, right? And then, oops, this was the student's essay. This was their how they scored themselves. Um, and then this would have been the feedback, right? So it would say like the student scored a 3 out of 4. The essay demonstrates a generally focused approach to the topic. Uh, uh, and then introduction and conclusion are present, but the organization could be improved for better coherence. Essay could benefit for clearer progression of ideas. Then, a 3 out of 4 on evidence and elaboration. Essay includes some relevant evidence for the passage. The connection between points and evidence is somewhat clear. And then, conventions of standard English, 2 out of 2. The essay demonstrates an adequate command. Overall, the essay shows a solid grasp of English conventions, things like that. Um, so this one was, yeah, this one would have been from probably Beth. I think you did mountain bikes, February,
Yes.
something like that. Yeah. So, this would have been one example. So, they didn't all look like this right from the start. Um, but, uh, but yeah, so this would have just been one, and then you get to like with the templates, like you get to customize what it looks like. I am not a creative person, so my templates are very boring, but you could make them really pretty, I imagine. Um, I just am not that person, so um yeah, so this would have been this is what a student would receive in their email, or I had some teachers who, my students are going to check or not going to check their email. So, okay, so I send them to the teachers and the teacher prints them off. And then that would be the way that they conference with their students, right? You conference with your student, you get your feedback, and we talk then. So, um, yeah. So, um, yeah, so, like I said, this has just been it's been a fun process. And I think that it is really important. Like both Beth and I, we were like, we had full jobs. Like this was not in my job description to do AI. It was, Beth was, being a teacher full time. And it was just us trying to seek ways that we could give ourselves time back, right? That was really what this was about for
Absolutely.
us. And I think that like people can learn how to do this stuff, like, and even if it's not to the same capacity, like if everyone's not like to the same capacity, it's okay. Like there is more to AI. If I could give you guys any takeaway from this, is there is more to AI than just interfacing back and forth with ChatGPT. um, but until you start exploring, until you start learning all of its functionalities, then you're just limiting like how you're using it. And what's really important is you don't need to go through a product, right? Like this is the anti-sales pitch, like, um, of you don't have to go through a product, you don't have to go through Magic School AI. As soon as you do those things, sorry, if someone randomly hears from Magic School AI, I'm sorry, I'm not really insulting your product, it's fine. But those are not like custom to your needs. Like the thing that was awesome is Beth and I were like, as needs came up, we just changed our prompt. We just changed our approach. Like we got to do it. It was really fun and it was really rewarding and just working together. And so like I would also say maybe a component of this is, finding a group of people wherever you're at and working with them, because it was not always just like when it was just me, I might have like fallen off and not continued on with this. But like getting to work with Beth and then seeing all of the joy that it brought her students and the progress her students were making, and having a person to just bounce ideas off of was really awesome, really rewarding. So
It was.
um any last questions, anyone? I'm like I said, I'm gonna stay on, but this is really like that's really it. So I will throw this back up. Please feel free to email. Yeah, I'm
Either of us. Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to collaborate with people. So that's really the joy here.